So based on Sonia's background, knowing that she had spent 3 months living and working in the United States, I made the initial assumption that she would be approaching level 2. And then after talking with her for half an hour or so, it became clear that her speech does have evidence of many of the level 2 functions. For example, she can explain using examples. There was evidence that she could compare and contrast. She can narrate in all 3 tenses somewhat. Her narration in the future was a little bit problematic, and we'll talk about that in a second. She can give instructions. Her detailed description, I asked her to describe the beach, for example, but this could be an artifact of her not knowing exactly what was required from the exam. So this is why it's important for us to let the students know not only obviously what topics may be on the oral proficiency interview, but also what kind of functions are expected. So it's important for us to tell the students, for example, to talk until the tester interrupts you so that they can give, in this case, a detailed description. And again, her information is not very detailed. She actually not only handled complications, but she was giving me complications during the role play in which she was interviewing me for a job. She could not discuss current events. I don't know if she couldn't or refused to. Her reasoning was that she was not interested in them, which I guess is typical of a young person. But again, this could be remedied by her having a better understanding of the interview process. And then this was an oral proficiency interview, so we didn't do anything with listening or with reading. However, there were a couple of points in the interview where I didn't feel like she understood what I was asking. For example, during the interview portion where we role played, she was the employer and I was the potential employee. I said that I was interviewing to work at a concession in her amusement park where food is sold, and I don't think she understood that. That's why I led with my restaurant experience, and she was like, "What are you talking about?" So that part was a little problematic. But overall, a lot of the level 2 functions are there. With regard to the descriptors, she definitely produces original utterances without prompts. She links her utterances with confidence. She did not stammer too much. Her general vocabulary is, I would say, we need to work on. Some of the things, and this is where maybe the future tense can come into play. Since English does not conjugate for tense, it uses auxiliary verbs. I would work on her use of going to and will instead of need to express the future, for example. She searches for or doesn't know uncommon words like consulate, opening band, she didn't know either, for example. But her basic common structures are controlled. One thing I would probably watch out for, and I will mark that with an exclamation point here, is that being a Russian speaker, since her first language does not use copular verbs like to be in the present tense, that kind of creeps into her English. So if she were my student, I would work on her using the to be verb in the present tense. Sometimes I felt like it was lacking. Less frequent structures were not controlled, and that's okay. Her pronunciation is fully comprehensible to me. There are little things though that she could work on, like she wanted to say agency and said agency. But that's a little thing. She responded to my prompts but kept talking. She understood linked utterances, but we didn't work on listening, so we're going to put that as not applicable for now. I don't recall her asking for help and clarification, but I don't recall her needing to, per se. So we'll go back and look at the tape to rate that one. She did not resort to Russian that I could remember. Yeah, her complication of not having a seat available on her preferred flight, she was good with. And also, she not only resolved complications during the job interview, but she also gave me complications, which I thought was pretty fun. And again, we did not do reading, and I did not feel like I slowed down my speech for her. So that is how I would rate this one. If we go over to the sample assessment, I pretty much followed the sample assessment, but I did make a few changes based on her her personal experiences, which I think we have to do with every student. First, I asked her how long she'd been in the U.S., and then I asked her what a typical day was like in the past tense at the Christmas tree shop she worked at in Massachusetts. Then I asked her what she used to do or did in her free time. Again, a pass. She mentioned the beach, so I had her describe the beach, which she did, but not with enough detail, I think. But again, with some training, I think she would understand the functions better and be able to do it. Then we did the travel role play, where she handled the complication. Then I had her compare and contrast Russian and American airport experiences. Then I had her explain to me how to apply for a visa. Then I tried with the current events, but we weren't successful. I asked her about Russian interference in the election. She didn't want to talk about that. I asked her about the earthquake in Mexico. She didn't want to talk about that, or the hurricane in Puerto Rico. So it was not something I felt that she wanted to talk about. But again, with a little training, she would probably be able to describe some things that she had knowledge of. And I asked her about her future plans, and that was a little bit, that's where I felt like her time frames kind of fell apart a little bit. I would want her description of the future to be stronger. Then I had her interview me for the job, which was related back to her future plans of working in an amusement park when she gets back to Russia. I thought she handled the interview particularly well. I was actually pleasantly surprised. And then I had her tell me how she would deal with children with problems, and I don't think she understood the prompt. But also there might be a cultural difference at play there, which would also which would also factor into her score, since in the United States, when children have developmental or behavioral problems, our first instinct is not to punish them. So culturally, it was a little off, or maybe she didn't understand the prompt. So we would have to investigate that a little bit more. And then to wrap up, I asked her what she would do when she got back to Russia, and then what does she miss about Russia and what will she miss about the United States. And those were the easy prompts to get her wind down.